Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow morning, grab your phone, and see a headline so shocking it literally splits history into before and after. We're not talking about some distant future or a slow, decade-long transition plan. We're talking about tomorrow. Boom. As if the political map of the United Kingdom just completely redrew itself overnight. What exactly would that actually look like? Well, welcome to This Explainer, where today we're diving into this massive, history-altering what-if scenario. Think about that collective moment of silence that would sweep across the globe right after the news breaks. That strange, frozen kind of shock where millions of people are just staring at their screens, looking at each other, trying to process the sheer magnitude of it. Because your immediate thoughts wouldn't just be about politics, right? They'd be totally foundational, like, wait, is this real? Is it legal? Is this peaceful? Has the entire system just been tipped into a completely new era without any warning? Because saying those two words, Scotland independent, splashed across every newspaper and newsfeed would send absolute shockwaves everywhere. And the really crucial thing to understand here is that the fallout from an overnight headline like this goes way, way beyond new flags and national anthems. This sudden reality would instantly crash into every single facet of daily life. We're talking immediate impacts on money, defense, trade, energy, diplomacy, and, of course, the deeply personal, emotional core of millions of people who suddenly have to look in the mirror and ask, okay, who are we now? So let's get right into Section 1, the day the map changed. We really have to start right at the epicenter of this ripple effect and look at the intense day one realities. Honestly, the sheer overwhelming scale of suddenly standing up a brand new sovereign nation is staggering. It's mind-boggling. Even if we assume the political groundwork somehow got laid overnight, look at what actually has to happen on day one. A nation isn't just a fancy speech. It's thousands of interconnected systems, departments, treaties, and databases. The Scottish government would immediately have to declare legal continuity, lock down the tax systems, figure out border protocols on the fly, and somehow prove to both its citizens and the entire world that it is ready to function. It is a colossal administrative puzzle. Moving right along to Section 2, money, borders, and trade. This is where we look at the actual infrastructure of a nation, the practical, everyday stuff that hits millions of households and businesses right away. And here we hit one of the deepest, most complex symbols of statehood. Would Scotland keep the pound? It's an intense dilemma. I mean, if they keep it temporarily, it gives everyone some much-needed stability for wages, savings, and mortgages, preventing a total panic. But if the whole point of independence is to be truly sovereign, you kind of have to debate creating a brand new currency, right? And here's the kicker. Financial markets, they don't wait around for politicians to sort out the details. Stock markets, bond traders, banks, they would be pricing in this massive risk and currency volatility the literal second the markets opened. Then there's the other massive day one headache, the border. Right now, Scotland and England share a land border that's basically an invisible line. People cross it every single day for work, to see family, to move goods, zero friction. But overnight, that completely changes. If that invisible line becomes a controlled border, you're suddenly throwing customs checks, passport requirements, and mountains of new paperwork at businesses. Even a tiny bit of friction across that border means a huge economic shock and total uncertainty for supply chains that used to just rely on a shared domestic space. So how on earth do you manage all that chaos? Well, it boils down to one golden rule. Continuity first, change second. For an overnight independence to not completely self-destruct, everyday essentials, pensions, hospitals, schools, keeping the trains running, they absolutely must keep functioning without a single wobble. Because if the administrative side fails, public mood turns on a dime. Independence feels inspiring when it feels like empowerment, but if you can't get your mail or go to the doctor, it instantly just becomes incredibly stressful. Okay, let's zoom out from the domestic stuff. For Section 3, defense, and the global stage. How does the rest of the world react to this overnight independence? The geopolitical stakes here, absolutely massive. A newly independent Scotland forces the globe to react instantly. Take NATO. They'd have to scramble to figure out North Atlantic security, especially what to do with the military bases and nuclear assets currently sitting in Scotland. Then you've got the European Union watching like a hawk. Would Scotland want to rejoin? And if so, do they get to fast-track the process, or are they starting from the back of the line? And like we mentioned earlier, the financial markets would be having an absolute field day pricing in all this volatility. Scotland wouldn't just be declaring independence, it would be urgently seeking international recognition to actually function in the world. Let's bring things back home for Section 4, identity, culture, and citizenship. Because underneath all the treaties and borders, the human element here is just deeply, deeply complex. For so many people in Scotland, waking up to this news would be a moment of pure, intense celebration. Picture the scenes in Edinburgh, Glasgow, Aberdeen, Dundee. Just an absolute outpouring of flags, music, and pride. It would be a long, debated dream finally becoming real. Scottish culture, its heritage, its modern identity, all of it would suddenly be amplified on the world stage like never before. It's the thrill of a people getting to define exactly who they are and what they want to be as their own sovereign nation. But, and this is incredibly important to understand, the emotional spectrum here is vastly complex. For others, both in Scotland and across the British Isles, this news would spark grief, nostalgia, and some really deep anxiety. You have to remember, the Union has been a foundational part of history for centuries. When something that old and rooted suddenly vanishes overnight, people genuinely mourn the loss of a wider identity that they cherished. And we can't forget the rest of the UK. England, Wales, Northern Ireland, they would be going through their own profound identity crisis. The Union wouldn't just be continuing minus Scotland, it would be a completely different political organism altogether. And all those emotional shifts lead us right into a very tricky, deeply personal issue, the citizenship puzzle. Think about it. Who automatically gets to be a citizen of this new state? What happens to a Scottish national who's lived in England for 20 years? Or an English-born person whose whole life is in Scotland? Are we allowing dual citizenship? Citizenship is so much more than just a passport or legal paperwork. It's a profound relationship between a human being and their state. If you handle a transition like this well, people feel like they belong. But if you mess it up, you're looking at fear, resentment, and a very real feeling of abandonment. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the ultimate trade-off. Let's pull all of this together and look at the big picture risks and opportunities of waking up to a new country. At the end of the day, independence is never just a magic wand that fixes everything, and it's also never just a giant pit of risk. It is the ultimate trade-off. On one hand, you are gaining control. You get that incredible power of democratic self-determination, the agility to build national policies and economic strategies exactly the way you want them. But on the flip side, you are losing scale. You're suddenly dealing with new trade barriers, intense fiscal pressures, and a dizzying amount of institutional complexity. You gain ultimate control in some areas, but you inherit a mountain of brand new obligations in others. And I think that leaves us with one final, really powerful question to chew on. Is a country made strong just by the act of declaring independence, or by the choices it makes the day after? Drawing a new map is definitely thrilling, but honestly, it's just page one of a much larger, way more complicated chapter. The real success of something like this all comes down to what a nation actually does with the power it gains once the street parties end and the really hard work of nation building begins. It is an absolutely fascinating look at how one single decision could turn tomorrow into an entirely different world. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this helped unpack the realities behind the ultimate what-if headline. Keep asking those big questions, and we'll see you next time.